It stands alone on the Giza Plateau. The most famous building ever made, the Great Pyramid, a shape burned into human memory, connected forever to the story of ancient Egypt. We're told it shows the best building skills from the 4th dynasty. A tomb for Pharaoh Khufu built over 20 years using organized workers and careful knowledge of the stars. But the Great Pyramid is not alone. Across oceans through thousands of years, the same shape appears again and again. In Mesopotamia, ziggurats climb toward the sky in stepped levels. In Mesoamerica, the Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan shows the same tall design. Along the Nile in Nubia, smaller pyramids mark royal tombs in the kingdom of Kush. In China, near the ancient city of Xi'an, burial mounds take the clear shape of pyramids. Hidden beneath hundreds of years of plants, these cultures never met each other. They spoke different languages, prayed to different gods, grew under completely different conditions. Yet they built monuments that share something basic. Square bottoms, directions pointing north, south, east, and west, huge size, a narrow incline toward the sky. The simple explanation is strength. A pyramid is the strongest way to build tall using basic tools and heavy materials. Gravity does the rest. Case closed. But strength explains survival, not love for building. Why the perfect star alignment? Why the ceremonial paths carved into stone? Why build far larger than needed, using many generations of work for buildings that serve no quick practical use? Why does this design appear not slowly but suddenly, fully formed, at the start of organized societies? Pyramids are more than building solutions. They are statements across the ancient world. They carry the same symbolic meaning. Man-made mountains, cosmic centers, places where earth meets sky. They connect human life to sky cycles. They mark power, lasting presence, and the line between human and eternal. This isn't a story about secret contact or lost super advanced people. There's no proof for that. This is a story about pattern, about a design that keeps appearing whenever humans reach a certain level of organization, belief, and knowledge of space. Tonight, we're going to follow that pattern. We'll travel from Egypt to Mesopotamia, from Mesoamerica to China. We'll look at shapes, star knowledge, and symbolism. We'll ask why this shape refuses to disappear and what it shows about the deepest instincts of civilization itself. If you enjoy exploring historical patterns hidden in plain sight, hit that like button and subscribe. As always, the pictures are here to add context, but they aren't necessary to follow along. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. You're about to explore one of history's most overlooked mysteries. Not how pyramids were built, but why they keep being built. Let's begin. The pattern begins where most people think it ends, in Egypt. But before we can understand why pyramids appear across the ancient world, we need to see just how far this design actually reaches, because once you start looking, you realize the pyramid isn't Egyptian. It's everywhere. Let's start with what we know. The Giza Plateau holds 3 huge pyramids. The largest, Khufu's Great Pyramid, rises 451 feet into the desert sky. Built during Egypt's 4th dynasty around 2500 BC, it stayed the tallest human-made building on Earth for nearly 4,000 years. Its shape is perfect. Its size is amazing, and for most people, it represents the beginning and end of pyramid building. But travel south deeper into Africa and the story continues. In what is now Sudan, the ancient kingdom of Kush built over 200 pyramids near the city of Meroe. These buildings are smaller, steeper, and look different from their Egyptian cousins. Yet the form stays clear, square-bottomed, rising walls, pointed top. The Kushite kings built them as royal tombs between 700 BC and 300 AD, more than 500 years after Giza. But the building instinct was the same. Lasting presence, height, shapes aligned to the north, south, east, and west directions. Now shift your view completely. Cross the Atlantic Ocean. Move back in time. In the Valley of Mexico, the ancient city of Teotihuacan holds the Pyramid of the Sun. Built around 100 AD, it rises 216 feet from a bottom that covers roughly the same area as the Great Pyramid of Giza. It was not built as a tomb. It was a temple, a ceremonial center, a monument to gods whose names we no longer fully understand. Yet walk around its base and you feel the same idea expressed in stone. Climbing upward, alignment, huge size. Further south, the Maya built stepped pyramids throughout the Yucatan Peninsula and Central America. These weren't separate experiments. They were central to city planning. At Tikal, at Chichen Itza, at Palenque, pyramids ruled the skyline. They served as temples, star-watching places, and markers of cosmic order. Many aligned to sun events, solstices, equinoxes, the rising and setting of Venus. Travel east now across the Pacific to the heartland of ancient China. Near the modern city of Xi'an, dozens of pyramid-shaped burial mounds rise from farming fields. The largest, connected with Emperor Qin Shi Huang, measures roughly the same height as the Pyramid of the Sun in Teotihuacan. These mounds were royal tombs built between 200 BC and 200 AD. For centuries, they were covered in plants, hidden as natural hills. But their shape is on purpose. Their direction is perfect. Their purpose is clear. To lift the dead above the living, to mark royal power in lasting form. And then there's Mesopotamia. Between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the ancient Sumerians, Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians built ziggurats, step pyramids that worked as temples. The ziggurat, built around 2100 BC, rose in 3 huge levels. At its top sat a shrine only priests could enter. These buildings were not tombs. They were man-made mountains, stairways between heaven and earth, places where gods and humans could meet. These civilizations did not communicate. There are no trade routes connecting Mesopotamia to Mesoamerica. No proof of contact between ancient China and Egypt. No boat technology able to cross the Atlantic or Pacific during these early times. Yet the pattern stays. Pyramids appear independently, in very different cultures separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years. And each time the main design stays the same. So we return to the question, why this shape? The simplest answer is the one that satisfies most archaeologists. Physics. A pyramid is structurally sound. The white bottom spreads weight. The inward slope prevents collapse. Gravity holds it together. If you want to build something tall without advanced materials or engineering, the pyramid is the logical choice. It's not mysterious. It's natural. And that answer is correct up to a point. Strength explains why pyramids survive. It explains why they don't fall under their own weight, but it doesn't explain why humans chose to build them in the first place. Why not simple platforms? Why not circular mounds which would be equally strong? Why invest generations of work into buildings that serve no immediate survival need? Why the love of height, of alignment, of symbolism that links earth to sky? Human life to eternity, human power to cosmic order. Strength tells us how pyramids stand. It doesn't tell us why civilizations keep building them. That question requires a different kind of answer, and finding it means looking not at the stones themselves, but at the ideas they represent. The answer begins to show itself when you stop looking at pyramids as individual monuments, and start examining them as variations on a theme. Because once you map their features side by side, something becomes clear. These buildings don't just look like each other on the surface. They follow the same design rules again and again across cultures that had no way of sharing blueprints. Start with the foundation. Nearly every pyramid from Egypt to Mesoamerica to China sits on a square rectangular base, not circular, not oval, not irregular. The base is deliberately four-sided with corners meeting at perfect right angles. This choice isn't accidental. Circles and irregular shapes would be equally stable, perhaps even easier to build, but builders always chose the square. Then there's direction. Pyramids align to the north, south, east, and west directions with amazing accuracy. The Great Pyramid of Giza aligns to true north within a tiny fraction of a degree, an accuracy that modern surveyors respect even today. The Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan aligns its western face to the point where the sun sets on specific calendar dates. The ziggurats of Mesopotamia position their corners toward the main directions. Chinese burial pyramids followed the same pattern, their axes running north-south with ceremonial exactness. This isn't casual placement. It requires watching, calculating, and purpose. Someone had to track sky movements over time, set reference points, and translate that knowledge into physical alignment. This demands planning that extends beyond the lifespan of any single builder. Now consider going upward. Pyramids are basically about rising. Not spreading horizontally, not digging underground, but climbing upward against human scale. The Egyptian pyramids lift stone toward the sky in smooth, unbroken slopes. Mesoamerican pyramids go up in dramatic steps, each level a platform for ceremonial procession. Mesopotamian ziggurats rise upward in shrinking stages, creating man-made mountains visible for miles across flat floodplains. Even the grass-covered mounds of China show height, ruling the landscape despite their weathered outsides. This vertical emphasis is consistent. But here's what makes it important. The buildings are far taller than they need to be. A tomb doesn't require 400 feet of solid stone. A temple could work at ground level. A royal burial could be marked with a simple stone marker. Yet across cultures, builders invested extraordinary resources into extreme height, resources that could have fed populations, built water systems, or expanded territories. The scale itself tells a story. These monuments required central authority able to move thousands of workers over decades. They needed extra food production to support non-farming workers. They demanded organized coordination across quarrying, transport, and construction. They reflect societies organized enough to give up immediate needs for long-term symbolic projects. Look at the comparisons directly. Egyptian pyramids and Mesoamerican temple pyramids both use layered construction, internal rooms surrounded by massive outer shells. Both include precise passageways aligned to star events. Both place ceremonial importance on the top, whether as a burial chamber, sealed forever, or a temple platform for public ceremony. The way they're done differs, but the underlying logic comes together. Ziggurats and Nubian pyramids, though separated by location and purpose, share the stepped approach to height. Both cultures built upward in visible stages rather than smooth slopes. Both created monuments that worked as focal points for entire cities, anchoring city planning and religious life. Both required sustained economic systems able to support huge building for generations. Chinese burial mounds and Egyptian pyramids both serve as royal tombs. Both emphasize main direction alignment, and both transform individual death into permanent landscape features. The Chinese covered their pyramids with earth and plants, while Egyptians faced theirs with stone, but the basic framework stays the same. The dead ruler, lifted above the living, directed to cosmic order, preserved in huge form. These aren't accidents. They're not natural outcomes of building with stone and gravity. They're rules. Independent invention can explain some similarities. Humans share basic thinking patterns. We all see the horizon, track the sun's path, and feel the psychological weight of height and scale. Environmental limits can push different cultures towards similar solutions. But rules are different. Rules mean conscious choice within consistent frameworks. When cultures repeatedly select square bases over circles, main direction alignment over random placement, and extreme height over modest practicality, they're following design rules that go beyond immediate function. This raises an uncomfortable question. Where do these rules come from? Not from building necessity. We've already shown that pyramids could be built differently and still stand. Not from practical function. They exceed every functional requirement. Not from random trying. The earliest pyramids in each culture appear remarkably refined, not crude prototypes. Gradually improved. The rules suggest something else. They suggest that pyramids are not simply buildings. They are statements made in the most permanent materials available, expressing ideas that matter more than money, more than comfort, more than immediate survival. Pyramids declare authority. They mark cosmic order. They connect human lives to eternal patterns. And wherever humans organize into complex societies, wherever they develop star knowledge and centralize power, these statements appear in stone, following the same ancient rules, as if responding to instructions written in human awareness itself. The question is no longer whether the pattern exists. The question is what it means. Understanding the rules brings us closer, but it still doesn't explain the why. To answer that, we need to stop thinking about pyramids as building projects, and start seeing them as expressions of belief. Because across every culture that built them, pyramids represent the same basic idea, the bridge between earth and sky, the axis where human and divine meet. They are man-made mountains, sacred geography made permanent. In ancient Egypt, creation itself began with a mound. According to their beliefs, before time existed, there was only none, the original waters, dark and infinite. From these waters rose the first land, a mound of earth, the Benben, upon which the sun gods stood and brought forth light. This wasn't a story. This was cosmic history, the real beginning of existence. The pyramid recreated that moment. Every time one rose from the desert floor, it echoed creation itself. The smooth-sided pyramids of the 4th dynasty weren't just tombs. They were the form of the original mound frozen in stone. The pharaoh buried within wasn't simply preserved. He was positioned at the axis of creation, the point where order first came from chaos. His pyramid became the fixed center of the world, a permanent reminder that structure, hierarchy, and divine power came from that first sacred emergence. Look at the pyramid's capstone, the Benben placed at the top. It mirrored the original mound in miniature, sometimes covered in gold to catch the first rays of sunrise. The pharaoh's journey through death matched the sun's nightly descent and rebirth. The building didn't just house a body, it mapped cosmic cycles onto physical space. Now move to Mesopotamia where the logic shifts, but the main idea stays. The ziggurats weren't tombs. They were temples, but more accurately they were mountains built where no mountains existed. The Mesopotamian floodplain stretched flat to the horizon. No natural high ground. No stone outcrops. Nothing to anchor the boundary between earth and heaven. So they built it themselves. The ziggurat served as a duku, a sacred mound, a deliberate construction allowing gods to come down from the sky realm into human space. Writings describe these buildings as dwelling places for deities, locations where divine presence could physically appear. The stairways going up the ziggurat's faces weren't decorative. They were functional paths for ceremonial procession, yes, but also symbolic routes for divine travel. At the top sat the temple chamber, the point of contact. Priests went up, gods came down. The ziggurat stood as the axis connecting two realms otherwise separated by ontological distance. Without it, heaven stayed unreachable. With it, cosmic order could be kept. Through proper ceremony. Cross the ocean to Mesoamerica, and the pyramid becomes a living mountain. The Aztecs called their pyramids tepil, the same word they used for mountains. This wasn't comparison, it was identification. The Templo Mayor in Tenochtitlan represented Cotopaxi, the sacred mountain where the god Huitzilopochtli was born. The pyramid was the mountain recreated in the heart of a city. Ceremonies performed at its top took place on sacred geography, collapsing mythic space into physical reality. The Maya built pyramids as huits, man-made mountains housing the divine essence. Temple pyramids at Tikal and Palenque weren't separate from nature. They were nature perfected, mountains refined into geometric precision. Caves and tunnels beneath some pyramids strengthen this symbolism, representing the Xibalba, the watery underworld from which life came. The pyramid unified three cosmic layers: underworld below, earthly realm at the base, and sky sphere at the top. Rulers performed ceremonies at pyramid tops not as political theater, but as cosmic maintenance. Bloodletting ceremonies, star observations, and royal announcements occurred at these elevated points, because that's where Earth touched heaven. The pyramid made such contact structurally possible. In China, pyramids took a different form, but expressed similar ideas. The royal burial mounds near Zion followed Feng Shui principles, aligning royal authority with cosmic harmony. The emperor wasn't just a political ruler. He was the son of heaven, the mediator between sky order and earthly chaos. His tomb had to reflect that position. These burial pyramids faced north-south along the cosmic axis. Their construction mirrored the organization of the heavens, with the emperor positioned at the pole star's earthly equivalent. Even in death, his presence kept cosmic balance. The pyramid mound wasn't a grave marker. It was a permanent fixture in the landscape's spiritual structure, ensuring royal authority continued working beyond human life. Look at what these cultures share. Not trade routes, not technology exchange, not language connections. They share a belief that existence operates on multiple levels: earthly and sky, human and eternal, chaotic and ordered, and that these levels can and must connect. The pyramid is how they built that connection. It's a cosmological diagram made three-dimensional. Every measurement, every alignment, every ceremonial path encodes relationships between human life and cosmic structure. These aren't buildings decorated with religious symbols. They are the symbols made into buildings. This is where symbolic coming together becomes difficult to dismiss. Independent invention explains technology similarity. Shared thinking patterns explain repeating designs. But when distant cultures independently decide that the proper way to bridge heaven and earth is through a square-based Mindiric vertically climbing stone monument, we're witnessing something deeper than parallel problem solving. We're witnessing humans repeatedly making the same cosmic beliefs into the same physical form, as if the building itself is built into the idea it expresses. If pyramids encode cosmic beliefs, they do so through something concrete and measurable: astronomy. This is where symbolism becomes science, where mythology hardens into mathematics. The alignments aren't vague or open to interpretation. They're precise, repeatable, and provable. And they reveal that these buildings served a function beyond representation. They were instruments for tracking time itself. Start with the measurement everyone mentions, but few truly appreciate. The Great Pyramid's alignment to true north, it shifts by less than 1/15 of a single degree. To achieve this without magnetic compasses or modern surveying tools requires sustained watching of sky movements, specifically tracking the rotation of circumpolar stars around the North Celestial Pole. The builders would have used a technique called the Indian circle method, watching stars rise and set along a leveled circular platform, marking their positions over the course of a night. By splitting the angle between rise and set points, they could locate true north with extraordinary accuracy. But this isn't a single night's work. It requires repeated observations, checking across seasons, and shared knowledge passed between generations of star watchers. This level of precision wasn't necessary for structural strength. A pyramid aligned within a few degrees would stand just as firmly. The precision reveals intent. These monuments were built to mirror sky order, not simply exist beneath it. The Egyptian focus on stars goes deeper. The internal shafts in the Great Pyramid, long dismissed as ventilation, aligned to specific stars. The southern shaft from the king's chamber points toward Orion's belt, which the Egyptians identified with Osiris, god of resurrection and the afterlife. The northern shaft targets the circumpolar region, the unchanging stars that never set, symbolizing eternal life. These aren't accidental. The shafts were cut at precise angles through hundreds of feet of solid limestone to frame specific star targets. The effort involved shows that star alignment mattered as much as the pyramid's outside shape. Move westward to Mesoamerica, where sun watching becomes most important. The Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan sits on an alignment that marks the sun's passage directly overhead twice per year. The zenith passages that occur at this latitude. On these dates, the sun casts no shadow at noon. For farming societies tracking seasonal cycles, this moment held deep meaning. It marked cosmic balance, the sun standing directly between earth and heaven. At Chichen Itza, the pyramid known as El Castillo performs an even more dramatic function. During the spring and autumn equinoxes, sunlight creates a moving shadow pattern along the pyramid's northern staircase, forming the image of the serpent coming down from the top. This wasn't accidental or lucky. The pyramid's direction, the angle of its staircases, and the depth of its terraces were adjusted specifically to produce this effect at two precise moments each year. This is building working as calendar. The pyramid becomes a visible marker of seasonal change, readable by anyone who witnesses it. Knowledge becomes monument. Time becomes stone. The Maya took this further, putting complex star calculations into their temple pyramids. Buildings at Uxmal align to Venus, tracking its 8-year synodic cycle with precision that rivals modern calculations. The governor's palace faces the southernmost rising point of Venus, an event that occurs once every 8 years when Venus reaches its maximum declination. Why Venus? Because its appearance as both morning and evening star made it symbolically important, a sky body that died and was reborn, crossing between worlds. Tracking its movements required decades of continuous watching, sophisticated mathematics, and record-keeping systems, able to preserve data across generations. This brings us to the deeper meaning. Astronomy of this sophistication doesn't appear randomly. It requires ongoing continuity, for astronomer classes with specialized training, protected from the demands of daily survival. It requires abstract thinking, the ability to recognize patterns across years, and translate them into predictive models. It requires social stability. Civilizations secure enough to dedicate resources to watching the sky, rather than just surviving beneath it. Pyramids both help and reflect this capacity. They provide permanent watching platforms, elevated above ground-level distractions. Their fixed positions make them reference points for tracking sky movements over centuries. Their durability ensures that alignments stay measurable long after the cultures that built them have vanished. Consider what this means over time. When a pyramid aligns to a solstice, it doesn't just mark one year's turning point. It marks every solstice forward and backward through time. The building becomes a fixed point in an otherwise changing world. Dynasties rise and fall. Cities expand and collapse. But twice a year, the sun still rises along that same encoded axis. The pyramid anchors human society to cycles larger than human life. It makes cosmic time visible, transforms brief sky events into permanent landmarkers. A farmer can't forget the exact day of planting. The king can misremember his coronation date, but the pyramid remembers. Every year at the same moment, light and shadow confirm what the stone has always known. This is why pyramids are more than monuments. They're time machines. Not in the science fiction sense, but in the real sense. They capture specific moments of star importance and preserve them in building form. They allow societies to measure their place within cosmic rhythms extending far beyond individual memory. The star precision transforms our understanding of what these cultures valued. They invested extraordinary resources not just to build tall but to build accurately, to ensure their monuments stayed synchronized with sky movements for centuries. They created buildings that would continue working as calendar, clock, and cosmic map long after their own languages fell silent. And they did this independently across continents without coordination. The sky was there. Shared text. The pyramid was how they wrote their response. We need to address the elephant in the room. Or rather, the pyramid in the desert. The standard explanation for why pyramids appear across cultures is straightforward and scientifically sound. They're the strongest shape you can build with basic technology: wide base, inward sloping walls, massive weight spread downward. Gravity becomes a helper rather than an enemy. The building can't fall because physics won't allow it. Build a pyramid and it will stand for thousands of years. This explanation is correct. Pyramids are remarkably stable. Engineers today still respect the elegant simplicity of their load distribution. The shape works. But here's the problem. Strength doesn't require everything else that pyramids have. A stable building doesn't need to align to main directions within tiny fractions of a degree. You could face a pyramid northeast, southwest, or at any random angle, and it would stand. This is firmly for just as long. Yet cultures always chose precise main direction alignment, investing significant effort in star watching and surveying to achieve it. Strength doesn't require internal chambers arranged along specific axes. You could hollow out a pyramid in any way without hurting structural strength. Yet Egyptian pyramids contain passageways aligned to stars. Mesoamerican pyramids have rooms positioned for sun watching. The internal shape serves functions beyond preventing collapse. Strength doesn't demand huge scale. A pyramid 50 feet tall would be just as stable proportionally as one 400 feet tall. The structural principles scale down perfectly. Yet builders always push toward maximum height, using exponentially more resources to achieve vertical extremes that exceed any practical limit. Strength certainly doesn't require ceremonial paths, stairways going up the outside, or top platforms designed for ceremony. These features add complexity and labor, without helping structural soundness. A solid plain pyramid would stand longer than one carved with processional roots. Yet the pathways appear anyway, suggesting priorities beyond mere survival of the building. So if strength is the answer, why not choose other equally stable forms? Consider the cone. A circular base narrowing to a point would be just as structurally sound as a pyramid. Arguably simpler to build since it removes the need for precise corner angles. Cones appear in nature constantly: anthills, volcanoes, sand piles. The shape is natural, stable, and requires no star knowledge to make. Yet ancient civilizations building on opposite sides of the world independently rejected this option in favor of square-based pyramids. Or consider platforms. A massive rectangular platform, basically a pyramid with its top flattened, would provide the same height, the same visibility, and the same structural strength. It would actually offer more usable space at the top for temples or ceremonies. The ziggurats of Mesopotamia lean toward this form. Yet even they keep the upward taper, the narrowing toward the sky. Pure platforms existed in ancient building, but they never carried the same importance. Then there are towers. Circular towers can achieve amazing height with proper engineering. Minarets, bell towers, and lighthouse buildings prove this across history. A cylinder form uses less material than a pyramid of the same height. It's more efficient. Yet towers don't appear as sacred buildings in early civilizations. The vertical ambition exists, but the specific form differs. The pyramid is neither the only stable shape nor the most efficient use of materials. It's not the easiest to build or the quickest to complete. It doesn't provide the most usable interior space or the largest top platform. From a purely practical standpoint, dozens of alternatives would serve just as well. Yet the pyramid is what cultures chose. Repeatedly, independently across vast distances and time periods. This is where the engineering argument breaks down. It explains why pyramids survive. Their shape resists decay effectively. But it doesn't explain the choice itself. It doesn't account for the investment beyond necessity, the precision beyond requirement, the symbolism built into every measurement. Think about it from the view of an ancient society. You have limited resources, finite labor, and a landscape full of immediate needs. Water systems require attention. Defenses need maintenance. Food storage demands construction. Yet you move thousands of workers, take over the economy, and dedicate decades to building a geometric mountain that serves no immediate survival function. That's not engineering logic. That's something else. Engineering explains how pyramids last. It describes the mechanical principles allowing stone to stack skyward without collapsing. It provides formulas for load distribution and structural stress. All of this is true, measurable, and important. But engineering doesn't explain love of building. It doesn't account for societies repeatedly choosing this specific form over alternatives that would work just as well. It doesn't address why the shape appears at civilization's start, fully formed, as if responding to drives beyond practical necessity. The pyramid could be stable and functional if built 5 degrees off Main North. It could stand for thousands of years without internal shafts aligned to stars. It could rule the landscape at half the actual height. Every practical concern would be satisfied. Yet cultures demanded more. They demanded precision where approximation would work. They demanded star alignment where random direction would stand just as long. They demanded heights that exceeded structural necessity and used resources beyond practical justification. The question isn't whether pyramids are stable. They clearly are. The question is why humans kept building them anyway, and why they followed the same rules each time. That's not an engineering problem. That's a human problem. And solving it requires looking not at the stones, but at the minds that shape them. There's another pattern worth examining, one that makes the already puzzling picture more complex. Pyramids don't appear gradually from centuries of building trying. They don't represent the culmination of slow step-by-step progress. Instead, they appear suddenly, fully formed, hugely ambitious at the very start of organized civilization. This timing raises questions that standard explanations struggle to address. Take Egypt. The progression from simple mastaba tombs to the Great Pyramid spans less than a century. Around 2700 BC, Pharaoh Djoser's step pyramid at Saqqara became Egypt's first major stone monument. It rose in 6 distinct tiers, reaching a height of 200 feet, revolutionary for its time, but still clearly experimental in design. Then barely 75 years later, Sneferu built 3 massive pyramids, including the Red Pyramid at Dahshur, which rises 340 feet and contains over 1.6 million cubic meters of stone. This represents not refinement but transformation, a leap in scale, engineering, sophistication, and organizational capacity. And just one generation after Sneferu, his son Khufu built the Great Pyramid, 451 feet tall, 2 million limestone blocks, internal chambers aligned to sky targets, precision that modern engineers study with respect. This path defies the expected pattern of technology development. Normally, cultures build simple buildings first, encounter problems, develop solutions, and gradually increase complexity over many generations. Huge buildings should be the end result of this process, not its beginning. Yet Egypt's timeline suggests otherwise. The kingdom went from mud brick tombs to the largest stone building on Earth, in roughly the span of a modern human lifetime. There's no lengthy experimental phase. No generations of failed attempts or abandoned projects revealing trial and error. The monuments appear as if the knowledge required to build them was already present, waiting only for enough resources and political will. Move to Mesopotamia and the pattern repeats. The earliest cities in Sumer, Uruk, Eridu, appear around 3400 BC. Within a few centuries, these settlements are building ziggurats. The White Temple at Uruk, built around 3200 BC, sits atop a massive platform requiring organized labor, resource allocation, and building planning on a scale far exceeding anything that came before. These weren't gradual projects. They represent sudden investments in huge size by societies that had only recently changed from village life to city complexity. The ziggurats don't appear after centuries of smaller temple construction. They appear alongside the formation of the city-state itself, as if huge size and civilization were inseparable. Cross the Atlantic to Mesoamerica, where the timeline becomes even more squeezed. The Olmec site at La Venta, built around 900 BC, contains one of the earliest pyramids in the Americas, a massive earthen mound over 100 feet tall. The Olmec built this without precedent in the region. There are no earlier smaller versions showing gradual development. The monument appears at the dawn of Olmec civilization, fully realized in both scale and symbolic complexity. Later at Teotihuacan, the pattern holds. The city's construction begins around 100 BC. Within a few centuries, it contains two massive pyramids. The Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon, along with a sophisticated city grid laid out according to star alignments. The city doesn't grow slowly from humble beginnings. It explodes into existence, huge from the start. Mainstream archaeology explains this through several ways. Rapid cultural development driven by farming surplus allows societies to support specialized labor. Social competition between emerging elites creates pressure to show authority through obvious construction. Religious systems consolidate power by building permanent buildings that show divine favor. These explanations are reasonable and supported by evidence. Surplus food production does enable monument building. Elite competition does drive building ambition. Religious authority does benefit from impressive buildings. But they don't fully resolve the tension because in each case, huge size appears before the societies have developed the technology infrastructure we'd expect to support it. Egypt built the Great Pyramid before developing advanced metalworking, before inventing the wheel for transportation, before establishing the full government system that later dynasties would rely on. The Old Kingdom achieved its greatest building feat early, not late. Mesopotamian ziggurats appear in cities still developing writing systems, still experimenting with administrative technologies, still consolidating farming techniques. The monuments arrive alongside civilization, not after it. Mesoamerican pyramids appear in cultures without metal tools, without draft animals, without wheels for transport. Yet they achieve scales and precision comparable to old world buildings, built with seemingly greater technology advantages. This creates a puzzle. If huge size requires sophisticated organization, why does it appear when organization is still forming? If massive construction demands refined techniques, why do the largest buildings often come before the full development of those techniques? One could argue that building the monuments created the organizational capacity rather than following from it, that societies developed government, specialized labor, and technology solutions because they attempted something beyond their existing abilities. The pyramid didn't result from civilization's maturity. It helped civilization's development. But that just rephrases the question. Why attempt something so far beyond current capacity? Why invest everything in huge size before securing more immediate concerns? Why does the drive toward massive permanent Star Island buildings appear so early, so consistently across cultures facing similar developmental thresholds? Natural selection should favor societies that solve practical problems first, build water systems, strengthen defenses, expand farming, establish trade. Yet repeatedly, early civilizations dedicate enormous resources to projects with no immediate survival benefit. Projects that could potentially destabilize the emerging society if they fail. The pyramid appears not as civilization's endpoint, but as its announcement, not as the result of long development, but as its helper, not when societies are secure, but when they're still forming. Why? Why does huge size arrive so early? Why does the drive to build something massive, permanent, and aligned to cosmic order appear at civilization's start, rather than after centuries of refinement? The answers we have feel incomplete. The pattern stays unexplained. Before we go further, we need to be clear about what this pattern does not suggest. It does not suggest ancient transoceanic voyages carrying building blueprints between continents. There's no archaeological evidence for Bronze Age Egyptians reaching Mesoamerica. No objects placing Mesopotamian traders in ancient China. No physical traces of contact between these distant cultures during the times when their pyramids were built. The ocean crossings required would have been extraordinary. The Atlantic and Pacific are vast, dangerous, and unforgiving to basic watercraft. While later sea cultures, the Polynesians, the Vikings, did achieve amazing ocean voyages, these came thousands of years after the first pyramids appeared. The technology, navigation techniques, and seafaring traditions necessary for transoceanic contact simply didn't exist when most pyramids were being built. Moreover, if contact had occurred, we'd expect to see more than just building similarity. We find shared pottery styles, metalworking techniques, farming practices, language borrowings, or trade goods. Meaningful cultural exchange leaves multiple traces. The pyramid pattern appears alone, building-specific, but culturally independent. So no, there's no hidden chapter of sea exploration explaining these monuments. The pattern also doesn't require lost super-civilizations. The idea is appealing: an advanced ancient culture now vanished that spread pyramid-building knowledge across the globe before mysteriously disappearing. It would explain the similarities neatly, wrapping everything into one dramatic story. But it's unnecessary and, more importantly, unsupported. Archaeological sequences are remarkably complete. We can trace the development of Egyptian civilization from pre-dynastic villages, through the joining of Upper and Lower Egypt into the Old Kingdom. We can follow Mesopotamian culture from the first permanent settlements at sites like Catalhoyk, through the appearance of Sumerian city-states. Mesoamerican chronologies show continuous development, from archaic period villages through the Olmec and into later cultures. These sequences don't show sudden intrusions of foreign knowledge. They show organic local development. The pyramids appear from within these cultures, not imposed from outside. Each civilization develops its own distinctive style, its own symbolic vocabulary, its own engineering solutions. The similarities exist, but so do deep differences, differences that make sense if these are independent expressions rather than copied templates. A lost super-civilization would also leave traces: settlements, trash heaps, modified landscapes, genetic signatures and descendant populations. Ancient civilizations are not invisible. We find their tools, their buildings, their trash. The absence of evidence here is genuinely evidence of absence. And no, there are no aliens involved. This should go without saying, but given how often pyramid discussions drift into extraterrestrial speculation, it's worth stating. Plainly, the pyramid pattern doesn't require intervention from beyond Earth. It doesn't even require extraordinary human abilities. It requires organized labor, star knowledge, and cultural commitment, all things humans clearly possess. So what does explain the pattern? The most honest answer is the one that sounds least dramatic. Shared human thinking operating under similar limits. Humans across cultures process the world similarly. We see height as important. Mountains draw our attention. Elevated positions give psychological advantage. We notice sky patterns, the sun's daily journey, the moon's phases, the rotating stars. These observations don't require advanced science. They require only attention and time. We all face death. Every culture confronts the problem of death and develops frameworks to address it. And we all organize into hierarchies once societies reach certain scales. Leadership requires legitimacy. Authority demands visible demonstration. Power seeks lasting presence. These aren't culturally specific concerns. They're human universals. The pyramid might be what appears when these universal concerns meet specific environmental and technology conditions. You need stone or suitable building materials. You need farming surplus supporting specialized labor. You need star knowledge developed through priestly or government classes. You need central authority able to move resources. When these factors align, perhaps the pyramid is simply the logical result. Not because cultures copy each other, but because they're solving the same existential problems with similar thinking tools and physical limits. This is independent invention, the mainstream explanation, and it accounts for much. But saying independent invention doesn't fully explain why the solutions are so structurally similar. Why not more variation? Why do the rules repeat so precisely? Why the main direction alignment, the square base, the vertical emphasis? Why these specific choices rather than the hundreds of alternatives that would work equally well? This is where the explanation feels incomplete. Independent invention suggests parallel development, but it struggles to account for the degree of coming together. Cultural solutions to universal problems should show more diversity. Languages, family systems, and art styles vary wildly across cultures, despite serving similar functions. Yet pyramids come together remarkably. Perhaps what we're witnessing is something more specific than general human similarity. Perhaps there's a developmental threshold, a point in civilization complexity where certain ideas become not just possible, but nearly certain. When societies reach enough scale, develop star watching, centralize authority, and confront the need to express lasting presence, maybe the pyramid appears as the natural building expression of that specific moment, not because of contact or instruction, but because that threshold activates certain thinking and cultural responses that consistently produce similar forms. This would mean the pyramid isn't accidental or random. It's not one solution among many equally likely options. It's the solution, the form that human awareness reaches for when civilization crosses a particular boundary of complexity and cosmic awareness. The pattern continues not because information traveled between cultures, but because cultures independently reached the same developmental stage and responded with the same building instinct. The question then becomes, what defines that threshold? What specific combination of factors makes the pyramid not just possible but seemingly certain? And why does crossing that threshold produce such consistent results across otherwise incomparable cultures? We trace pyramids across continents. We've examined their roles, their symbolism, their star precision. We've confronted the inadequacy of simple explanations, and the strangeness of their sudden appearance. Now we can step back and see the full picture. The pyramid is not a cultural thing. It's a civilization one. It appears at a specific moment in human development, not randomly, not gradually, but when societies cross a particular threshold of complexity and awareness. And that threshold is defined by four coming together factors. First, central authority. Pyramids require command structures able to move thousands of workers over decades. They demand economic systems that create surplus, governments that coordinate planning, and hierarchies that channel resources toward non-survival goals. You cannot build a pyramid in a village of equals. You need pharaohs, priests, kings, emperors, figures who claim authority not just over people, but over the very ordering of reality itself. The pyramid both shows and strengthens this authority. It's too large for any individual or family to build. Its scale announces the presence. The power structures going beyond kinship and immediate community. When you stand before a pyramid, you stand before an organized society made visible. Every pyramid building culture shows this pattern. Egypt's old kingdom centralizes power under divine kingship. Mesopotamian city-states consolidate authority in temple complexes. Mesoamerican societies develop layered hierarchies with rulers claiming descent from gods. Chinese dynasties establish royal governments governing vast territories. The pyramid doesn't just appear in these contexts. It's inseparable from them. Second, star watching. Pyramids are not randomly placed. They align to main directions, sun events, and star events with precision that requires sustained sky tracking. This means societies have moved beyond immediate survival concerns to develop abstract knowledge systems. They're investing resources in watching the sky, recording patterns, and translating observations into building form. Astronomy signals. Thinking sophistication. It requires recognizing that cyclical patterns have predictive value, that today's observations connect to events months or years away, that invisible forces govern visible events. Societies capable of this thinking have crossed from reactive survival into proactive planning. The pyramid puts this knowledge permanently in place. It transforms brief sky events into fixed landmarkers. Every alignment is a claim. We understand the cosmos. We can map its movements. We can anchor our civilization to patterns larger than ourselves. Third, the search for lasting presence. Pyramids are built to last. Not for a generation, not for a century, but indefinitely. They represent humanity's most ambitious attempts to defeat time itself. This drive to create something that lasts beyond human life appears when societies become self-aware enough to recognize their own fragility. Farming civilizations understand impermanence deeply. Crops fail. Rivers flood. Populations die from disease or war. Everything that lives eventually crumbles. The pyramid is humanity's response to this recognition. If we cannot live forever, perhaps what we build can. This isn't practical construction. It's existential building. The resources invested in pyramids could feed populations for decades, build extensive infrastructure, or expand territories. But those achievements would fade. Granaries empty, roads deteriorate, conquests reverse. The pyramid remains. It trades immediate use for eternal presence. Fourth, confrontation with death. Every pyramid-building culture develops sophisticated frameworks for understanding death. Egyptian pyramids house eternal bodies awaiting resurrection. Mesopotamian ziggurats connect human realms to afterlife domains. Mesoamerican pyramids mark portals between living and dead. Chinese burial mounds preserve royal essence beyond physical decay. The pyramid doesn't just acknowledge death. It building-wise defeats it. The ruler buried within doesn't simply die and disappear. He becomes permanent. His tomb becomes landscape. His name becomes carved into stone that will outlast empires. Death transforms into monument. This is humanity refusing to accept death's finality. The pyramid is the argument made in millions of tons of stone that something can go beyond biological limits, not through resurrection or reincarnation, but through memory made physical, presence made permanent. When these four factors come together, central authority, star knowledge, the drive for lasting presence, and confrontation with death, the pyramid appears not as one option among many, but as the form these concerns naturally produce. Look at what the pyramid accomplishes at the same time. It shows authority through scale. It puts star knowledge into place through alignment. It achieves lasting presence through mass. It defeats death through huge preservation. No other building form serves all four functions so completely. This is why the pyramid appears at civilization's start rather than after centuries of refinement. Because these four concerns appear together. Centralization creates the need to show authority. Star watching develops alongside institutional continuity. Lasting presence matters once societies become conscious of their historical position. Death becomes building-wise addressable only when surplus allows non-survival investments. The pyramid is what happens when human awareness reaches this specific intersection. It's the physical form of societies becoming aware of themselves as entities existing across time, subject to cosmic forces, confronting certain death, yet able to create lasting order. This explains the global pattern without requiring contact. Egypt, Mesopotamia, Mesoamerica, and China independently crossed this developmental threshold. Each culture brought its own looks, its own mythology, its own engineering solutions. But each faced the same basic challenges. How to express authority, encode cosmic knowledge, achieve lasting presence, and go beyond death, and each chose the same form. Not because they learned it from each other, not because some ancient template was passed down, but because when human societies reach this particular stage of complexity and self-awareness, the pyramid is what makes sense. It's the solution human awareness produces when confronting these specific problems. The pyramid is not Egyptian or Mesopotamian or Mesoamerican. It's human. It belongs to the moment when societies organize themselves beyond immediate survival, develop abstract thinking about cosmic patterns, recognize their own impermanence, and attempt to build something that outlasts everything human. That moment, that threshold produces pyramids as reliably as similar conditions produce similar crystals in geology. The pattern continues because it's written into human development itself. The pyramid is psychology made permanent, awareness made into building, death transformed into monument. It is what we build when we first understand what we are and decide to create something that will remember us when we're gone. We began with a simple observation. Pyramids appear across the ancient world in cultures that never communicated. We trace that pattern through building, symbolism, astronomy, and timeline. We've examined explanations and found them incomplete. Now we arrive at something quieter than revelation, more basic than mystery. The pyramid belongs to no one and everyone. It's not Egyptian, though Egypt's pyramids define the form for Western awareness. It's not Mesopotamian, though ziggurats came before many other examples. It's not Mesoamerican, though the Americas developed the most diverse pyramid traditions. It's not Chinese, though their burial mounds stretch across landscapes. Still, the pyramid belongs to a moment in human development. The moment when we first asked certain questions and sought answers in stone. Those questions are old, perhaps as old as awareness itself. How do we make order from chaos? The world is vast, unpredictable, and uncaring. Storms arrive without warning. Rivers flood and recede by hidden rhythms. Seasons shift through cycles we at first cannot predict. Early humans lived within this randomness, subject to forces beyond understanding. The pyramid is an answer. It forces order. 4 sides, 4 corners, 4 main directions, square base meeting perfect angles, height rising according to geometric law, every measurement deliberate, every alignment on purpose, every stone placed according to plan. The pyramid takes chaos, raw stone, unorganized labor, uncertain futures, and transforms it into structure. It announces we can force pattern on disorder. We can take formless material and shape it into meaning. We can build something the elements cannot easily undo. How do we achieve lasting presence in a world of decay? Everything visible breaks down. Wood rots. Fabric tears. Flesh returns to earth. Kingdoms rise and fall. Languages vanish. Entire peoples disappear. From historical memory. Impermanence is the basic condition of existence. The pyramid resists this. It uses the heaviest materials, the strongest form, the most lasting construction. It gives up flexibility for endurance, use for immortality. A pyramid serves no immediate function beyond its own staying power. It exists to outlast everything around it, including those who built it. When Egyptian scribes wrote on papyrus, they knew those documents would fade. When Mesopotamian priests carved tablets, they understood clay was fragile. But the pyramid was meant to survive when everything else failed. It's humanity's bet against decay. Our bet that something we create can go beyond the lifespan of living matter. How do we connect Earth to heaven? The sky was humanity's first teacher. Before writing, before cities, before farming, humans watched sky movements and recognized patterns. The sun's path marked days. The moon's phases marked months. Stars wheeled, and shapes have returned predictably. The heavens represented order, eternal, mathematical, uncaring about human concerns. The pyramid bridges the distance. It rises from earth toward sky, narrowing as it climbs, pointing always upward. Its alignments connect land space to sky events. Its shape translates abstract star knowledge into physical form. Standing at a pyramid's base and looking up, you trace the same gesture humans have made since awareness began, the attempt to reach beyond human limits towards something eternal. How do we defeat death? Or if not defeat it, at least argue against its finality. Death terrifies and fascinates equally. It's the boundary we cannot cross, the darkness we cannot light, the end against which all meaning must be measured. The pyramid is humanity's most ambitious response. It doesn't promise resurrection or reincarnation. Those are belief answers. Instead, it offers something simpler and more direct. Remembering through mass. The ruler buried within doesn't escape death, but his name, his presence, his claim to importance become landscape. As long as the pyramid stands, he remains. Not alive, but not entirely gone. This is what pyramids share across cultures, not construction techniques or building blueprints, but responses to questions every complex society eventually asks. The mystery isn't that pyramids were built. Humans have always built. We're builders by nature, shapers of environment, forcers of order. On chaos. The mystery is that when faced with these basic questions, order, lasting presence, cosmic connection, death, cultures separated by oceans and thousands of years answered with the same form. The pyramid is not mysterious because we don't understand how stones were moved or how alignments were calculated. Engineers can explain those ways. Archaeologists can document the construction sequences. Historians can trace the social organizations required. The pyramid is mysterious because it keeps appearing, because it represents something essential enough to human awareness that it surfaces independently, repeatedly wherever civilization reaches enough complexity. Perhaps that's the real pattern. Not in the stones themselves, but in what they show about us. The pyramid shows that humans, when we gain the ability to build beyond immediate need, consistently choose to build toward the same ends. We create monuments to order, lasting presence, cosmic alignment, and going beyond death. We make our questions into buildings, and we do it with the same shape, following the same rules, expressing the same basic human refusal to accept the world as we found it. The pyramids still stand in Egypt, withered but recognizable. In Sudan, partially restored. In Mexico, cleared from jungle overgrowth. In China, hidden beneath plants. In Iraq, worn down but still visible. They outlasted the languages that named them, the empires that built them, the religions that made them holy. They remain because that's what they were designed to do. Not just survive, but continue as reminders that humans once stood where we stand now, faced the same existential questions, and chose to answer in stone. The pyramid doesn't solve those questions. It doesn't make order permanent or death reversible, but it shows that humans have always asked, always sought answers, always built something meant to outlast our brief, fragile lives. That drive to create meaning. From stone, to force structure on chaos, to reach towards something eternal, that may be the most lasting building of all. Not the pyramids themselves, but the need that built them.